Okay, this is sort of the end of the first day of this build, which involves this Sol-Ark inverter and this battery cabinet. The cabinet is 32 inches deep, 36 inches wide, and 6 feet tall. And the inverter is the Sol-Ark 15K. It's got some pretty spectacular specs, and I got the stud welder going today, and I welded studs onto the back of this cabinet, which is extremely thick sheet metal. And here's another couple of studs, and they're copper color because they're steel studs with copper plating on them so they don't corrode, and the copper burns away when they weld, no problem. This inverter is IP65, so I'm putting it outside completely, and I'm gonna face the screen here to the north side. It gives a warning about direct sunlight on the screen. I don't know about that. So the inside of the cabinet is going to hold 7 SOK 100 amp hour 48 volt batteries. They're lithium iron phosphate, and their server rack mount. This rack is actually the rack that the manufacturer of the batteries supplies. I think they have different versions of it, but this one was for you, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 batteries, and then this little splice here is where I put the other one on top. And since my enclosure only is going to allow for 7 batteries total, I cut off the foot off of the bottom and one space of rack, and I sawed that into a little adapter here, and I riveted the adapter to the bottom right there, and then I used the screw pattern from the rack and I screwed it on right there. So it's removable, which is great because I had to take it apart to get it inside this enclosure. I got 2 pieces of steel from my friend's burned down house, and I cut them as supports for the weight of the bottom of the feet there, and I just ran it over to the edge here so that it gets inside this fold and pushes down on this. Should be pretty strong. I didn't bother fastening it to the bottom because this enclosure has this strut and it's very firmly attached. So I added on to that across the back in these 2 locations, and I'm going to bolt the rack directly to the back unistrut. So I don't expect it to move at all, and so I omitted the attachment to the bottom. I did attach the legs to the piece of steel. Oh god, sorry. Right here by doing some more studs, welded some studs there. I had a little bit of a failure on those 3 of those studs. I'm not sure why. I think it may be related to my ground clamp. The stud welder is capacitor discharge, and it really requires a good ground connection, and I think that I just didn't quite get it. I cleaned a spot on the steel right there, a little rusty spot off, and clamped the ground there, but maybe that wasn't sufficient. The machine's a little new to me, so I also might not know what I'm talking about. I've insulated, you can see a little peek out there, going down. That's 3.5-inch rock wool, and also going up the side here and across the top. Of course, these batteries have to be kept climate stable. So I'm starting with enclosing the box. This is a very design build project, and I don't exactly have a plan, but I'm working my way through it. And I'm gonna attach this over somehow, and I had to cut a little angle in it to get it inside the container and cabinet on this funny angle like this. It was very tight. I knocked out a little knockout in it back there for the strut right there, and I'm gonna piece this up and put some sort of thing on it to hold it together. I haven't gotten there yet. The cabinet is top lift right there, and I'll lift the whole thing and carry it away as one. So the inverter here has all of its connections on the bottom. So I'm gonna use a couple of those knockouts and come straight out the bottom, and then kick a little angle in my EMT, and then do a conduit body, or it'll be through the cabinet into the battery enclosure. And I think I'm going to put a convenience outlet on the inside too, for heating or anything else, a monitor or something like that. The inverter has some nice gaskets. If you need to know the specs on this 15K, I suggest you pull up the sheet and just give them a look over for your own thing. This system is going to be completely off-grid and no generator or grid tie at all. This inverter heavily supports both of those things in ways that are just unimaginable. It has a 200 amp auto transfer switch built into the inverter, so it'll switch the entire 200 amps of your house, and you can AC couple it with something like almost 20,000 watts of string inverters, so it will power up those inverters too and cycle them. It's totally awesome. And it has some really bomber specs, and so yeah, I'm more or less going to be just using the battery connections. It has parallels, which is super handy. I'll be using the battery connections and the PV connections, which I believe are right here, and that's basically it. I'm going to have a single 50 amp California 50 twist lock out of this unit, and that'll be mounted here at the bottom. So it'll be really simple. It'll be a conduit of PV, a conduit of batteries, some data cables here and there, and then just the output. And the output's going to be a weatherproof mount to the outside of the enclosure. So that's the project. I'm really liking this enclosure. It's really turning this into a fancy project. So yeah, hope that's cool. Thanks.